All right, good morning, everybody. It's early, isn't it? Thanks for coming along. I don't normally get out of bed this early, so it's unusual for me. My name's Mark Allen, and I'm a Google certified teacher and app certified trainer for Google. I'm an independent consultant who helps schools move to the cloud. And I've moved my own school, the school where my 4 children went and where I am a governor, somebody who helps the direction of the school. We moved to Google Apps around 7 years ago. And 4 years ago, I started to show some other schools what we'd done, and they all liked the look of it. So I started to think, wait, this is more fun than my day job. And I changed tack and started to become a consultant specializing in this thing. It's not entirely Google, but as I hope to demonstrate in a while, Google provides such a standardized and uniform platform from which to build things that it's an integral part of everything I do. I wanted to start with just something that you may have seen before because it did the rounds on the internet a couple of years ago. And it's about this idea of not necessarily carrying on with the same model. I mean, I think what we're looking for with our students is to provide an environment where there can be some kind of shock to the system occasionally to make them think differently. And occasionally shock will look and feel like this rather than the previous image. So this is what you're going for. This is what sometimes happens. And this will happen with staff as well, because what we're talking about here is more difficult for adults to assimilate than it is for kids. And actually, what we're really going for is this moment here. This is a kid the first time they ever see fireworks. Okay, so, and actually, I could probably just leave this here and go for a coffee and you'd be fine. But what I think is important is that we don't just think that we need to tweak the model. I'm actually interested in transforming schools so that it becomes something that's more appropriate and more interesting for kids. I know my own kids, if they want to know how to hang 10 on a skateboard, they'll go to YouTube. That's where their learning will happen, or they'll ask their friends. And I think the biggest challenge for school is to remain relevant in a world where information is so freely accessible. So here's a little story about a place in Scotland. I should point out that this is the pub, okay? And this is the car park for the pub, which is not a great idea to start with. And this is a guy who forgot the distinction between forward and reverse motion and came out of the pub, got in his van, and wham, straight into the water. Okay, so the smart thing there is to bring in some support mechanism to try and recover from it. And that it's all going well. I saw Richard Gerber present this recently, and he pointed out that all men are attracted to this successful project. So we're starting to get a bunch of men who have adopted the male pose like this, and they're all being drawn to it because it's a successful project. But physics is physics, and there's a lever and a heavy weight at the end of it, and before we know what's happening, we get this. At this point, the men say, whoa, nothing to do with me. I was really nothing to do with this project from the outset. So, but everything is a learning opportunity. We're saying, what can we learn from this? What did these guys learn from it? They learned that we're going to need a bigger truck. All right. So, and it goes well. The men are starting to be sucked back into it, and everything's going well. And then we get to the slightly harder challenge, and I don't need to show you the next slide, do I? You can guess. All right, so now it turns out that this is entirely fake. Okay, this has been analyzed. It's a photoshopped image, and yet we all kind of want that story to be true somehow. But there is nevertheless this Einstein's definition of stupidity is to keep repeating the same mistakes and expect a different outcome. And there is a sense that that's what we're doing in education, that there's an awful lot here. Every year I come to BETT, every year I say I'll never come again because there is so little real innovation going on at this place, I think. They're basically tweaking the model. Now, I just decided 2 minutes ago to put that in, by the way. My real talk starts now. And just because you're maybe teachers and you should always give teachers a gift, I'm using a tool here called Slides with a dot before the E, so it's slid.es, which is a presentation tool that's based in HTML5 and has nice transitions between the slides, but without the seasickness of Prezi. I mean, I'm sure we've all been to Prezi talks where you need sick bags in the front row because people are panning and zooming and showing off because teachers don't understand that less is more sometimes, so they put too much in. So I want to talk, you take this away, by the way, slid.es, and this presentation and all my others are at slides/ed in the clouds because that's my Twitter handle. What a lot of the guys on the stands in this hall are trying to get you to do is to believe that their sandpit and their tools, their toys, are the one thing that is going to transform your life and make everything wonderful. And I find this even with platforms like VLEs, for instance, that you go on and become expert in one tool. And what I want to try and present to you here is the notion that Google isn't a tool, okay? Google is a way of working, it's a mindset. And in our school, that's captured by the motto, the mantra, really, of create, share, collaborate. Our kids from 4 years old know certain things. They know that they could probably get better bandwidth, better broadband at home than we've got in school. We have terrible broadband in our school. So they will, the 3 8-year-olds who produce the school newspaper, for instance, they will prefer to work in their respective homes in the evening, collaboratively, than they will to work in school, because it's frustrating being there with our bad bandwidth. When you work in this way, it stops just being about the functionality of the specific tool. So when people get into a debate about whether Google Docs can compete realistically with Microsoft Word or Microsoft Office in general, I think that's missing the point. Sure, there are some features of MS Office which go further and deeper than you can go easily in Google Docs. But the way of working, which is based around collaboration, opens up so many other possibilities for transforming your pedagogy and your teaching that it's a much bigger proposition than simply a comparison of tools. So what you end up with when you install one of these individual tools in your school is that somebody will end up being the expert. And if you're the principal in that school, you end up feeling like you've managed to learn how to spin that plate. The problem with being the principal in a school is that you have many, many plates to spin all the time. The environment within which schools operate is shifting all the time. The financial environment, the organizational environment with in this country, the Department for Education changing the rules so that now grassroots movements and associations like clusters and teaching school alliances, federations, associations, multi-academy trusts, all of these are good in the sense that they're grassroots initiatives to try and wrest some of the power away from the centralized procurement model of the local authorities. But they bring their own issues with them, and collaboration is one of those. So you end up being ahead, thinking that that this is the load you're carrying all the time. I mean, 3-4 years ago when I put this slide together, I thought ICT was what it's about. That's even disappeared from the agenda now. But still, a principal's role in a school or an educational organization is that they are carrying so much stuff that even though you may feel that you want to move to, these are shots of my school, by the way, you want to move to an organization in which the learning happens everywhere and anywhere, in school, outside school, individually, collectively, all the rest of it. And a school where you've democratized the tools of production so that the knowledge and the expertise resides not in one person's head, but is distributed across the organization. You may feel that absolutely that is the vision of where you want your school to be in 6 months, 2 years, 10 years time. But in our school, we have this, it's a bit twee, to be honest. It's a little bit, nauseating, I guess. But this is the kind of the model of what we want learning to be like in our school. But a lot of the heads I speak to, and I've worked with about 150 schools now, a lot of the heads I speak to will tell you that they would love to move in that direction, but they've got to sort out the laptops in the lab or in the ICT suite. They've got to get the skill set of their staff up to speed. They've got a whole list of reasons why they can't move to this more strategic vision. And we end up having to fix problems on things that may not even be a part of the finished picture before we can begin the real journey, which is to move forwards in terms of technology, pedagogy, and culture change. Because this is what most workflows and processes look like inside schools. They've grown up organically over years, so that, you know, in my school it took a long time to get the calendar sorted out, the shared collaborative diary that runs the school. So you had the situation where the phone would ring and somebody would take down the details of the phone call on a post-it note, and then they'd grab the physical diary and they'd transcribe from the post-it note into the diary, and then they'd carry the diary through to the staff room and write it up on the whiteboard so that staff could see it, and then they'd go and sit at their desk and put it in the Google Calendar. You know, 4 actions for something that could have been done in 1. Now, I'm not talking about any kind of time and motion Ford Motor Company way of working, but I'm talking about eliminating barriers to productivity, and that's what this way of working allows you to consider. So you can untangle this rat's nest of spaghetti or noodles, and the tool that helped us pick our way through that mess was Google Apps for Education. Now, again, I want to stress that when you're talking about Google Apps, you're not talking about just the creation and productivity tools. You're not just talking about docs and sheets and slides and the other great tools that Google Apps provide. What you're looking at is something that will let you consider the different ecosystems that are present in your school. There's the communication ecosystem, where you've got people and the tools they use in order to communicate information and the workflows which have grown up around that. There's the tools and services ecosystem. And finally, there's what I call the plumbing. There's the Wi-Fi, the networks, the infrastructure, the devices, the administration, all of that kind of stuff. And Google plays an integral part in the schools I work with in every one of those ecosystems. So it's not just about giving kids a different word processor. It's about having a consistent, standardized base on which your strategic planning for the future direction of your school can take place. First thing I do when I work with a school is go and get a domain or use a domain that they already have, and that becomes, if you like, the monopoly square on the internet for that organization. Once you have that, you can, I'm going to mix my metaphors here, you can use Google Apps as a kind of Lego that allows you to build the resources that your organization requires. So you can build the houses and hotels that make up the organization, and you can decide who gets the keys to them as well, because the admin console allows you to set the permissioning on the resources that you're constructing down to a very fine degree of detail, so that if you want to build something that is your school website, you can do that. That's a Google Sites resource which has been built, and where the various components of this front end feed in dynamically from wherever they're being edited by non-technical people in your organization. So teachers are sitting on the bus putting things in the calendar that update the front page of the website without us requiring a webmaster or a technical person to do that. And you have various communities of interest in your organization. All human organizations do. You have the staff as one stakeholder group. You have possibly governors, some strategic thinking body that is determining what you're going to do. Again, all of this stuff is being updated and fed by non-technical people who've had zero training, you know, maybe 10 minutes of training to show them how to put something in the diary, how to embed a form in the front page. The VLE, I mean, do you remember that VLEs were kind of the big thing 5 years ago? Every school thought it had to have a VLE. No, you don't. What you need is a way of assembling the resources that are relevant to the learners in your school. So typically, I will build up an interface like this for each of the stages and phases and groupings of students in that organization. I skipped over one just now because Google Plus is 2 years old now, and at first it was thought of as a Facebook killer. But a year ago, Google introduced something called Google Plus Communities that can be private spaces for the exchanging of information and ideas. And it turns out that as a place for CPD to happen, as a place for dialogue to happen among your staff or among other stakeholder groups, it is perfect. So this is a glimpse of a private group of Key Stage 2 teachers who now use this space in addition to, and in some cases instead of, their weekly staff meetings. They're having their staff meetings all the time in an online version of the physical space. So you can build any of those resources that you need in order to streamline and standardize your approach to communication in the school. But that then allows you to consider that you're ready to start your journey towards that vision that we talked about briefly just now. But once you do that, there's a great book that I would recommend everybody in the world reads by a Canadian guy called Michael Fullan, and the book's called Stratosphere. It's only 80 pages, and in it he steals some of my best ideas, but he essentially reduces it to the successful transformation of school and education systems to 3 strands. Sure, we've got to talk about technology because the technology is now out of the bottle and it's not going back, and our 7-year-olds are more proficient in this technology than their teachers very often. So we've got to move to embrace new technologies, and that is a constant. That will continue to change at an ever-increasing rate, and get used to it because that's not going away. But it's not the most important thing. The most important thing in a successful transformation of your school, nor is pedagogy the most important. Although the technology allows you to imagine new ways of delivering learning and engaging with students and encouraging them to love their learning, I'm not pedantic about which of those pedagogies might be right for which teacher. It's for each teacher to decide. But anything becomes possible. As I mentioned, in our school, our terrible bandwidth means that we flip quite a lot of the learning. And the kids will watch videos ahead of class, and then class becomes a social space where we do philosophy for children and we discuss the learning, and we concentrate more on the meta-learning than the learning itself. But the most important of these 3 strands, the one without which your initiatives will fail, is the engagement. Senior management needs to support and champion the transformation of the school. They can't expect to impose this on staff because otherwise staff will treat this just as another chore, as something else they have to endure. And in a lot of schools where they have perhaps a male principal who's slightly technical, I've seen plenty of staff who say, let's just ignore it. It's just Steve doing one of his things and it will go away if we ignore it. Well, no, that's not good enough. As senior managers, what you need to do is to plan that route out over the next 2, 3, 5 years and engage staff through the sorts of tools that I've shown you so you get maximum buy-in from everybody in the organization. And I think I'm done, actually. Yeah. All right, so if you have any questions at all, please do come up and hit me. I'm going to be here for a while. But enjoy the show. Thanks very much.